Number 25. Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. My favourite era of Godzilla really does have a bland penultimate film. This movie definitely has the feeling of running out of ideas. Like, hey, what if Godzilla fought another Godzilla, but from space? Woo! Also, we have Little Godzilla that looks a lot like a chibi Godzilla. Well, he's not worse than Manila at least. And I really think Space Godzilla's design just comes off as lazy, considering that they basically just retooled the Super Godzilla design. Considering with all the other designs they could have gone with, yeah, it just does kind of come off as lazy. And well, I really do like Mulgera. I really do love the design of Mulgera in this movie. He basically spends the entire movie getting his ass kicked, and that's his point. The final battle also really does have a lot of filler, with honestly not a lot happening because it's mostly just the monsters firing their beams at each other. This was always my problem with some of the Heisei era Godzilla movie battles, where it basically just felt like that it was just Godzilla firing his atomic breath for the whole fight. And this movie really does feel like it, because Space Godzilla's design meant he was so hard to move around in, is that they couldn't really do much hand-to-hand combat, so they had to resort to basically just energy weapons and Godzilla just firing his beam all the time. There isn't really that much to this fight, it's just basically that. They also bring up in this movie that Godzilla has a bit of intelligence to him, yet he keeps on firing his beam at Space Godzilla, which Space Godzilla can create a shield to reflect, so it just sort of feels like they had to do what they could with what they can, and it just sort of leads to an uninteresting fight. There's also other moments of this movie that just sort of had that feeling of an whatever, fuck it, movie sort of to it. Because, I mean, there's a scene of the movie where Godzilla's tail tip falls off, and they might have reshot that scene, but, you know, it just sort of feels like they went, screw it, let's just leave it in, no one will notice, apart from everyone notices it. It's also the same with the characters. Apart from the returning cast, most of them don't really have any standout moments. Apart from the commander who wants to kill Godzilla because Godzilla killed someone in his past. And he is interesting in that sort of tired war veteran sort of character, who's just sort of done with life and just wants to get revenge, no matter what the cost. But apart from that, all the other characters are bland. Honestly, I do feel like you could completely skip this movie, go from Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla to Godzilla vs Destroyer, completely skip this movie and you wouldn't really miss anything. But apart from that, there are some good things in this movie. It's nice that this is the first Heisei era Godzilla movie where Godzilla is the outright hero from beginning to end. Also, Little Godzilla is really cute, I'm not going to deny it. And some of the things that Space Godzilla does are really cool, but it's not really enough to really save this movie. The feeling I get from this movie when watching it is mostly tired. This is a tired franchise, and you know, it sort of felt like it was a tired Godzilla movie. They were just out of ideas. It completely makes sense that they decided to end it at the next movie. So yeah, it's just a meh Godzilla movie. Oh, and why were the two guys on the island watching the commander guys shower? Seriously, what was the point of that? Number 24. Son of Godzilla. Oh man, this movie. This is where the Showa era really takes a drastic change. This is where it really takes a left turn into becoming a very kid-friendly movie. And it's not as bad as some of the other movies get, but you can tell Son of Godzilla is the start of Godzilla's turn into kid-friendly hero. However, it isn't a bad movie. It has a fun plot, an interesting setting, despite the last Godzilla movie being Godzilla on an island, and the next movie is Godzilla on an island. And yes, Godzilla does look like the Cookie Monster, and Manila, well, do I really need to say anything that hasn't already been said? The main problem I really have with this movie is that there are too many main characters. There are so many characters in this movie, which should have been like an isolated bottle episode of a movie where it was, you know, Godzilla on an island with just a handful of people, and this one there is just so many people in this movie. So none of them really get any kind of development or growth, they're just there to react and be scientists. But this movie does have plenty of Godzilla action. Well, it has Godzilla sleeping a lot, but then Manila is running around getting into trouble, which, you know, can be cute at times, but then you realise what Manila looks like. But it's all in good fun, and we do really get some good Godzilla being a dad moments. He's a better dad than most humans, honestly. As for Kumonga and Kamacuras, well, they're basically just giant insect kaiju. There's nothing really special about them. I mean, Kamacuras is just there to get his ass kicked. That's the whole That's the only point of him being in this movie. And it's a really fun first fight, don't get me wrong. Godzilla just beating up some puppets is always fun. But the final fight with Killmonger isn't really that good because, well, it is Godzilla fighting a giant puppet and there's not really much they can do because if Godzilla does some of the stuff that he does in the later movies, there's very much a chance that he'll break a lot of the puppet strings and stuff like that and, well, we could see a puppeteer falling off the rafters. There's not much really to say about the final fight, it's just not that memorable. But really, it's a movie where you can see Godzilla start to becoming really silly. And I can't deny, the ending is really, really heartwarming. I mean, when I was a kid, this ending actually got me teary-eyed. The two monsters hugging each other as they freeze, Godzilla being a dad reassuring his son that everything's going to be okay, despite what's going on, it really does leave a lump in your throat. It's a very good ending. It's just a shame the rest of the movie isn't that much, really. When it gets silly, it gets really silly, but when it's to the human stuff, it's just, well, boring Godzilla human stuff. So yeah, this movie can be really fun, but it also can be quite boring at times. Number 23. Godzilla Planet of Monsters. Okay, while I originally said that this movie was alright, rewatching it I realised just how much filler there was. This movie already takes a good half hours before the characters even get to Earth. And well, let's be honest, that first half hour has very little to do with the rest of the story. They really should have just started the movie at the humans landing on Earth. Also rewatching it, I just realised how unlikable the main hero is. He is just a cardboard cutout, edgy dick, who is just an absolute asshole to everyone. He has very little development and very little personality, and this movie is supposed to make us, side with him, make us think that, yeah, this is a personal, deep, like Moby Dick story that he's going through, but, he's just an absolute asshole. Why everyone likes him is just beyond me. And this movie was also supposed to be set up for the other two movies. I can understand that. But as we've seen from the sequel, all that setup basically led to nothing, because the second movie was all set up as well. It has the same problem as the Matrix sequels, where it likes to tell you how everything's important and what this is and what that is and how it all makes sense and everything, but it doesn't think to actually do anything with it. It tells you how important and how amazing all this stuff is, it doesn't do anything with it. It's like, oh yes, it's going to be really interesting later on, but as a movie standalone by itself, it's not that interesting. We don't want to be told how amazing it is, we want to see it. This movie doesn't have a lot, it's mostly just people talking. Just very uninteresting cardboard cutout stereotype anime characters just talking. It's not interesting. And I still just can't get over how uninteresting the main character is. He's the character that's in quite a few Godzilla movies. The character who wants to get revenge on Godzilla because Godzilla did something to his past, but he's just such an emotionless dickhead. He's like, oh, Godzilla killed people I love, that means I hate him and I'm emotionless, I'm a dick to everyone, apart from, everyone else is in the same situation as him because Godzilla and all the other kaijus killed a lot of people. That's if you read the prequel novels. So, just him singling himself out as like, this is my personal battle, but, everyone else can completely make this a personal battle because, Godzilla killed a shit ton of people in the prequel novels. So everyone would want to get Godzilla, but no, it's all him, it's all about him, and he's just not interesting. He's such an anime trope character. And when you get to Earth, you realise what a terrible leader he is, and they are in way over their heads. They can barely beat the not Godzilla, and then when the real Godzilla shows up, he just obliterates them easily. And if you think about it, what is there in this movie that puts it above any other Godzilla movie? Apart from how big Godzilla is, there isn't really that much in this movie. It's all stuff we've seen before. This was such a wasted opportunity. This setting is such a great idea, and they fucked it up. I can only dread how they'll fuck up the big grand finale. But why is it above so many other movies in this list? Well, I'm not gonna deny, it's a very well made anime. There's a really good animation in it, and it's very well acted. The story isn't ridiculous, but it's not interesting in any way. It's kind of boring. But still, it's a decent, simple movie premise. There's some definite effort and care and love that went into this movie. Apart from the story and the script, really. It's just so carbon, boring and interesting. And it's a shame because there is so much talent in this. Such a wasted opportunity. Number 22. Godzilla vs. Megalon. Amazing how ridiculous this movie can get. For a film that was shot in less than a month, they sure do a lot with hardly anything. This was originally not going to be a Godzilla movie, it was going to be a Jet Jaguar movie. Because Jet Jaguar was designed by a kid, and they won a competition, Toho were going to make it its own movie with, Jet Jaguar versus Megalon and Gigan. It was going to be amazing, but then to make more money, they basically shoved Godzilla in. And Godzilla really does feel shoved in, because he basically is only at the start and at the very end of the movie. And this is also the most humanized Godzilla has ever gotten. This is the first time we ever see him use tools, and he also shakes Jet Jaguar's hand. It's ridiculous. I love it. And also, this is in the era of Toho movies that were just chock full of stock footage, even using stock footage from the last movie, especially when day and night just switched drastically, so you would think that this fight goes on for a few days, but no, actually it's basically just seen as a few hours, which doesn't make much sense. But it is just ridiculous. You got these two human characters who are just idiots, even though one's a scientist and one's a famous race car driver. You've got an annoying kid who, well, he spends most of the movie getting his ass kicked by the bad guys. And oh, the bad guys. They're just the best characters in this movie because of how stupid and ridiculous they are. Seatopia, what an amazing idea for a Godzilla movie. An underground city that's pissed off with humanity, blowing up atomic bombs, so they're just like, let's release our monster. And oh yes, Megalon. He's one of my favourite kaijus because he starts this movie as being introduced as like this god creature that can destroy the whole world. And then halfway through the movie, he's jumping around and skipping like a child. It's just ridiculous and I love it. And him and Gigan seem to be genuine friends. Like Godzilla and Anguirus level of friends. It's just full of great moments. It feels like a WWE match at the end, but it really does feel like you could put WWE commentary over this final fight. It's pretty amazing, and also Godzilla's greatest ever attack, the sliding tail kick, which, doesn't make any sense at all. What's the physics on that, but still, it's just amazing. But I'm not going to say this is a good movie. It's not a good movie. It's not a good movie in any way. It's an amazingly riffable movie. You can take the piss out of this movie for the whole time it's on. It's a great time watch, but it's not a good movie, and I'm not going to defend it as a good movie in any way. It's a piece of crap. It's a cheap, quickly made piece of crap, but it's an amazingly funny piece of crap. Number 21. Godzilla Tokyo SOS. Okay, I feel like this may be one of my most controversial picks, because I've seen this movie appear on a lot of top 10s, and well, I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I just don't get anything from this movie. I'm not going to say it's not good, but as for a Godzilla movie, it doesn't really break any molds. It's just another Godzilla movie in my opinion. It also feels like everything about this movie was a bit of a downgrade from the preceding movies. The characters aren't as good, the fights aren't as good, the plot isn't as good. It's just not as good. And Godzilla himself isn't that good. I'm not a fan of Godzilla movies where Godzilla spends the whole movie getting his ass kicked. Now I know a lot of Godzilla movies have that, but usually during the end of the fight Godzilla gets a resurgence and comes back and wins the fight. But no, in this movie he basically just spends the entire time getting his ass kicked. He's supposed to be the villain of the movie, but he never really felt that much of a threat all throughout the whole movie. Which is something Godzilla should never be. He should never look weak. He should be the god of destruction. The alpha predator of the entire planet, the top of the food chain. He is Godzilla, the king of the monsters. But he doesn't really feel like a king in this. Yeah, he gets a few moments, but they never last long. He basically just spends the whole movie getting his ass kicked by Mothra and Mechagodzilla. It's just very disappointing. As for everything else, well, this does have my favourite Mothra design. It has a good balance between beauty and actually looking like a kaiju. And as I'll say later, this Mechagodzilla is my favourite Mechagodzilla design, although why they keep calling it Mecha G in this movie makes no sense. But they also just repeat the same plot from the last movie, of where Mechagodzilla gets damaged so the pilot has to go inside Mechagodzilla and control it from there. It is pretty much note for note exactly the same as Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. And as for characters, well, we had one of the best female characters in all of the Godzilla franchise in the last movie, and for some reason they just boot her off to another country, and we just get this nerdy annoying douche character in a replacement who is not as good as her in any way, shape or form. He just isn't that likeable in any way. This movie also has a bit of a wasted opportunity in that the Mothra Shinobis come to humanity to say return Mechagodzilla to the sea because because Mothra's angry that Mechagodzilla has Godzilla's bones in them, and that's why Godzilla's attacking humans because they've disgraced the bones and stuff like that. That could have led to something quite interesting where it would have been Mothra as an anti-hero, sort of like she's not on the human side, but she also wants to stop Godzilla. That could have been interesting. It could have been a three-way fight, but no, they just sort of... But no, Mothra kind of gets sidelined for when Mechagodzilla shows up and she dies, as usual. But I will say this movie does have one of the best kid characters in a Godzilla movie. You know, he's not annoying and he's quite smart and has a nice character, and, you know, he's not overly thrust into the movie where he shows up in every scene. Like, he shows up in military facilities telling them not to destroy Godzilla because Godzilla's the friend of humanity or stuff like that. They don't do that with him. He's actually a pretty good character. But yeah, this isn't a bad movie. It just feels like a bit of a downgrade from the last movie. It's just a bog standard Godzilla movie to me. I don't see the fuss about it. It's alright, and that's about it, really. So that was the list. Tell me what you think of my choices, and tell me what you would put in your 25 to 21 slots. Next week we're starting the top 20. Anyway, tell me what you think in the comments below, and of course subscribe and all that stuff. Enjoy my Patreon, and, you know, see you guys next time.